Welcome to all of you. Thanks for coming tonight. It turned what we envisioned as an informal meeting is just a little more formal in that we asked Shane to come and tape it so that anybody who might be interested in this subject but couldn't come tonight can pick it up either on PCTV or at pctv76.org, where you can get this meeting up on an on-demand webcast. So that's a great opportunity for anybody who wasn't able to come, and any of you who want to make sure that friends or neighbors who are interested in this subject can grab that and pick up on parts of the meeting. So I want to thank you all for coming. As I say, our intention was to have a rather informal meeting, and the reason for that is not a public hearing. There is no formal proposal been filed with the village, but I thought I would start back at the beginning to the extent that we know it and describe what's gone on this parcel of land that's under discussion, how we got it, what it looks like, and what might be proposed for it. So we're going to plunge us all into darkness here so that the image comes up okay for you guys and also on the TV screen. And then after we've described what we know about this proposal, then we would be happy to entertain questions or have anybody who wants to come on up and let us know what your preliminary thoughts are. So you want to push those lights off, Patty? Okay, so I think most of you are probably aware of the site in question. If you're driving out Washington Avenue, and this is Washington Avenue headed out towards Chappaqua, these two buildings here are the brick garden apartments that are on the left side. That is the train track side of Washington Avenue as you head out towards Chappaqua. There's a parcel of land here that's what's shown highlighted in yellow, which is now a village-owned parcel of land. It has had several different owners over a period of time. There were a number of different owners in the 60s we see in the title search, but in 1994, am I correct, Patty? I'm pretty sure I'm right. 1994, this parcel was conveyed to the village for tax arrears. So it had fallen behind on taxes, ultimately was foreclosed, and the village has owned this parcel since 1994. So the big section here is, and these numbers are all subject to confirmation by surveys in the end, but the tax map suggests that it's, let me see here, about 440 feet wide and about 250 feet deep. So about 440 feet wide here. And then this piece that comes out to Washington Avenue is also part of that parcel. It shows on the tax map as being 34 feet wide, and so that is a parcel of land that connects Washington Avenue to this piece back here and is between the south end of the garden apartment property and the north side of the adjacent house. So it was before most of our time involved in village government, but at the time that the village acquired this, there was some discussion in the 90s with a couple of different potential buyers, and then nothing came of it. This whole zone is zoned what's called R4, which is a multifamily zoning, which allows, among other things, projects like the existing garden apartment complex. So any of you who wanted to dig into what the R4 zoning permits, you can look up our zoning code on the website, which is pleasantville-ny.gov, and that allows you to drill into all the different elements of the zoning code. A little bit arcane, but what I would say at the moment is that we haven't done an exhaustive zoning analysis of this, but our belief is that it is a property that might require a variance based on the width of this street frontage. So again, to be determined, nobody's gone to that extent yet, but the notion of a multifamily development back here is permitted as of right by the zoning, and the zoning has been that way for many decades. So let me just bounce one step forward. That's the Google Maps view again. Here are the two brick garden apartments, and this is the site behind, between the brick garden apartment complex and the Metro North property, which starts back adjacent to the track. So the back of this property is roughly, not just roughly, it's aligned with the back of the property lines for all those adjacent homeowners. So As many of you may know, or you may know either from the press or from the recent stuff that's been flying around, the county signed an agreement with the federal government a couple of years ago at the end of the Spano administration, which was the result of a lawsuit that was filed against the county. Long, complicated story, but the short version of it is that the county is under an obligation to develop fair and affordable housing, and that fair and affordable housing can be developed in several different ways, including a mix of ownership housing as well as rental housing. And the ownership housing is mostly aimed at 80% of the average median income, and if I get any of this wrong, pipe up. Norma Drummond happens to be here from the county. Here is the average median income in Westchester County for a single-person household, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So, for example, for a 4-person household, the average median income for a 4-person household in Westchester is $104,700. And so a project under this settlement that was intended to be purchased by a qualifying family would require an income of not more than $83,800 for a family of 4. For a unit for 3 people, $75,400, working its way down to a single-person household. 80% of the average median income is $58,600. The rental housing is mostly developed at 60% of the average median income, which, as you can see here, for a 4-person household is $62,800, $56,500, $52,000, and $43,900. So the fact that the county has signed this settlement binds the county over a period of 7 years to developing about 750 units of affordable housing in a set of 20 some odd communities that are potential recipients of this. Pleasantville is on that list. So the county has been working with various communities as well as various developers in trying to find ways to implement all of this. But at the same time, private developers have been examining properties that are available in various places and looking for places they might develop proposals of this kind. So the village has been approached by 3 different private developers who are interested in this site. Back up to the site again. So 3 different private developers have come to us and said, hey, if you will sell us this piece of property, we're interested in developing a privately owned development that would then go back on the tax rolls and would generate income to the village through the sale. And they have various different ideas of how it might be developed, and we're certainly not here tonight to represent what any of those developers might do specifically. If and when they are ready to do so, it would be up to them to present to us and to all of you exactly what it is they propose to do. But what I can tell you is that 2 of the developers have proposed a rental project, and one of the developers proposed an ownership project. They vary in size from 18, 19, 20 units to, I think the highest proposal we've seen is something like 32 units. I believe I'm correct in saying that the existing garden apartments that are already on that the upside of that hill have 24 units right now. So we have also been given some illustrations from some of these developers showing projects that they have done elsewhere, and that is what you see. I mean, again, nobody's suggesting that it's that any of these things are exactly what would be built if a developer were to purchase this property, but that gives you the idea of what the developers who've come to us have been representing. So it's again up to a developer who might propose how to develop this property in terms of what the site plan would look like and what the mix would be of studios, 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartments. But I think the sense we have from all of them is that it would be a mix of those 3. And as I say, it remains to be seen exactly what the zoning circumstances are. Clearly, the site is compliant for a development of that kind. And the question of whether that piece that sticks out to Washington Avenue is a zoning compliant or would require a variance is yet to be determined. It looks like it may require a variance to make that happen. So the short version of the story is that we've been approached by these developers, and they are all interested in the village making a commitment to them to be willing to sell this property. It would appear that the property is worth in the neighborhood of $1 million for a project of this kind. And so if we were to decide to go ahead with such a sale, the village would generate $1 million or thereabouts. And I dare say that the value of the property obviously would fluctuate depending on the nature of the project and the number of units that were proposed. And so really I think there are a couple of questions for all of us, and we are here to hear what you all have to say that would be of interest in this connection. One of them is there's the affordable housing question, and I know people have had questions and concerns about what exactly is affordable housing and what could I expect if there's an affordable project in my neighborhood. So that's one question. And then I know also that there are questions about development in general, whether it's affordable or market rate, the impacts of development in this neighborhood. So I just want to throw one other thing out there that some of you may be aware of. Probably all of you are aware that the old Baker Properties site on the other side of Washington Avenue, a little bit farther north, those two sort of 50s style office buildings are owned by an investment group in Manhattan, and they have allowed all the leases to expire, and they have closed the buildings and, as you probably have seen, blocked off the roadway. They've determined that the property does not have a future as an office complex. It's at a point in its life when it needs a significant infusion of cash, roofs, HVAC, all that sort of stuff. And an office complex of that size on Washington Avenue in Pleasantville, by all reports, and certainly by the experience I think we've seen, is not a go-go proposition. So we expect, based on our conversations with that owner, that they are likely to sell that property to a company that would come forward with a residential development. Nothing has been filed yet. We don't know even who for sure would end up buying this thing. This has been going on for some months, this discussion with the owner, who says, we expect very soon to be in contract, and then a contract vendee would come to the village with a proposal, but none has been forthcoming yet. So what we're expecting is that at some point in time, the Baker Property site will be before the village through the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board, as well as the Village Board, for a project that's likely to be residential. Don't know, obviously, what it would be, but it obviously abuts Foxwood at the high side of the hill, and so it may be that it's a Foxwood-like proposal. We don't know that yet. There are some sections of that property that are separated from the rest of it by wetlands. Whether it might turn out that there are some single-family home sites at the north end of that property, we don't quite know. But it's a hillside, as you know, so there are some issues attached to that. So that's worth knowing, as well as something that is going on in the background and about which we don't know an awful lot. But it does seem pretty clear that what was once a big, busy, fairly substantial office complex is likely to turn into something else at some point down the road. So if anybody has any, go ahead, Minnie.
Just clarify why Pleasantville is on
go ahead.
The list of municipalities that need to come forth with or promote fair and affordable housing, is that over the years we have signed an agreement with the county for community development block grant money, which we've been the recipient of over the years. And when the Village of Pleasantville signed that agreement, they said that they would promote fair and affordable housing in the Village of Pleasantville. So that happened way before any of us were here, but it did happen in the Village of Pleasantville. We have a signed contract, and that's why we're part of that consortium. So to clarify that.
What I'm going to suggest is if you guys have questions or comments, I just pull that a little bit forward so nobody gets tangled in this rope here. If it's helpful, we can just leave that up, even though it's a little sunstruck with the light. So anybody who has any questions, we'd be more than happy to answer them, and we're really here to hear from you all about what you're thinking. So, but because this is being taped and others who aren't here may want to watch it, I'm going to ask that you come up to the mic to ask a question so that it gets recorded, and if you could just give us your name and address, that would be great. Okay? So.
I don't know.
Evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. I'm Joseph Stargiotti, and my question is, do we know with any more detail what the level of the village's commitment or obligation to fair and affordable housing is? Do we have, for example, a number of units that we're obligated to put in over a certain number of years, or are there guidelines or something else? Do we know what the level of our requirement is?
I think...
Or if there is a requirement at
Yeah.
all?
Okay. This is Norma Drummond, who's from the planning department at the county, and
Nice to see you.
she's probably the best.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Old friends.
Well, yeah, our paths have crossed. Good evening, everyone. I'm Norma Drummond. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of Planning for Westchester County. So one of the tasks that I have on a daily basis is dealing with affordable housing and the Community Development Block Grant Program. There are no allocations, Joe, to answer your question. There are no specific allocations for any community. Right now, I can tell you to date, we're about not quite a year and a half in, but to date we have 154 units with financing already in place and 89 building permits already pulled for housing units that will qualify toward the 750. So we're making great progress. We actually have probably right now total about 281 units that we're actually reporting to the monitor that are in the works in all various stages. Those 281 units cross over 13 different municipalities. By the way, there are 31 eligible municipalities. The mayor had said 20 something, so I just wanted to clarify that there are 31 eligible communities. So there is a lot in the works. There's even a lot more that we are working on, but just aren't in a position yet to make information public. But the bottom line, to answer your question, is there are no specific allocations to any community. We are meeting regularly with most of the communities within the 31 eligible to kind of talk about what vacant land do they have available, which land does the municipality own, what are developers interested in. So there's no allocations at this point for any municipality.
Thank you, Norma.
Thank you, Norm. Anyone? Feel free to come up. Yeah.
My name is Robert Clark. I live on Romer Avenue. And my question is, I thought a number of years ago that we built affordable housing on Tompkins at what I call the senior center. And I'm a little confused by why I know the whole settlement with Spano, I read that in detail, but I'm a little confused about the fact that we've already extended ourselves, we've already built affordable housing, and I'm just curious, does that count in the equation for the 750 unit settlement with HUD?
Correct me if I say anything wrong, Norma. It does not count. The village built the senior center, which is a project that actually has lower income levels than these are described as, but which is specific to seniors. And it happened and was opened before this settlement ever happened. So although this village has a proud record in this area, none of those units count towards the county 750. But as Norma indicated, it's not as though Pleasantville's on the list that provide a specific number.
Right.
The other thing that's floating around out there is the county has requested that and has proposed a model ordinance that they're seeking to have all Westchester communities pass, which would require an affordable set-aside of 10% of the units in a newly built project of any kind, even projects that are not primarily aimed at affordable. So that's where we stand on that front. There is a project going on right now that A-Home, which is now based in Pleasantville, is doing, and that is a house that's on Pleasant Avenue. I don't know if you noticed it. It's just south of Grant Street. It's the only house south of Grant Street that's on the Sawmill side of Pleasant Avenue. White house, very close to the highway. It was owned for many, many years by the Department of Transportation. They had years ago a program of having their foremen live in various places along the rights-of-way. The house has been vacant for a long period of time and complicated sequence of events, but the state DOT sells it to the county. The county is selling it to an affordable housing group, which will renovate and restore the house, build a modest addition on it, and it will be sold to a qualifying buyer with an accessory apartment in it. So that will be, I think, two units that will count for Pleasantville that count towards the 750.
My only point is that we have already done a fair amount, And from my readings last year and the year before, when Spano signed that agreement, it seems that there are a substantial number of communities in Westchester that have done nothing and have no plans on doing anything.
No doubt.
And I
mean, Norma's in a better position to list the communities that are already in line, but there are, I do know that some of the communities that have been criticized in the past for not having done anything on that front are working on it now, so.
I'm Dave Peacock. I live on Leland Avenue. So it sounds like we don't have to do this, that we could fight it. There's no specific set aside.
Nothing to fight. At the moment, I mean, the village does not have to sell this property. One of the things we did, unrelated to any of this, is assess, what properties does the village own and why? In the interest of serving all of us as taxpayers, if there are fallow properties that used to be on the tax rolls and aren't any longer, why not? I mean, there may be good reasons.
Well, it seems to me that a family of four that makes $80,000 a year isn't going to pay enough taxes to put 2 kids through our schools. It seems to me that the additional burden on the schools is going to far outweigh any one-shot deal of $1 million.
They pay for it. They pay
Yeah.
taxes on the value of their home, like
They pay
you or I
taxes,
would.
yeah.
On the
And
value of
how
the-
much does it cost to educate children through the Pleasantville schools?
They're paying.
Yeah, but I
portion
pay
of the
more in taxes.
Well, so, I mean, you raise a point, obviously, that comes up every time anybody talks about new housing development, and that is, at what point does housing development create more burden than it produces in terms of tax revenue? And that's hard to predict, other than to say, I think it's pretty clear that having nothing to do with this project, we can't slam the door on development.
I'm not trying to slam the door on development
I
at
didn't
all.
mean to suggest you were, but what I wanted to say was, some of you may have been a party to the discussions that have gone over the years about MLA and proposals down on Marble Avenue for condo projects and like down there, and obviously the impact on the school district is a big piece of any discussion of that kind. What we're talking about here, given what's been proposed to us so far, in the range of high teens to low 30s total of units, not clear what would be as of right zoning and not clear how it would play out, would be a mix of units, at least as described so far, some of which would be family friendly, some of which would not. So don't really know the answer to it, but it's
Well, I
absolutely.
mean, why low 30s? If the county as a whole is only required to do 750, and if there are 31 municipalities in there, why can't we stick with the 20s? Why can't we minimize it?
We could. I mean,
I'll
no
tell you,
problem.
I didn't grow up in Pleasantville,
Yeah.
all right? I grew up in a planned community called Columbia, Maryland, where low-income housing was built into every little neighborhood. And problems developed, and over the time that I lived there, in 20 years, it went from being a town a lot like Pleasantville, where people would run around outside, kids could run around outside, to a place where there were murders in the park, where there were drugs in the school, and where there were police helicopters flying over my house at night. And in 20 years, my parents' house appreciated for the first 10, and it didn't appreciate a dime for the last 10. And this was in the 90s and early 2000s when they finally got out of the neighborhood. These things never stop at one development. There's always phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And it's a real concern. I think it's a concern that we need to address as a community. And I think it's something that we should not necessarily, you should realize there are people that are very opposed to this.
That's what we're here for.
There are
Hear what
a
you have
lot
to
of
say.
people who are very opposed to this in this community.
That's what we're here for.
Hi, good evening. Dennis Taranchuk from Washington Avenue, almost directly across the street. I just want to clarify, we say we're on a list from the county among 31 communities. Is it legally required that we do it? Is it, we're on a list, do we have to do it, or?
I think
I'm not-
my understanding of this, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, Norma, is that as of the moment, we're not legally required to do anything. And in
Right
the
now.
hypothetical that 750 units get built within the required 7 years, the county wouldn't be coming after anybody.
Right.
In the event that they don't achieve the 750 units, towards the tail end of this settlement, the county is, I believe, required to make it happen. So that's just one variable to which there's no answer. As of the moment,
Right.
we don't
But
have to do
we
it.
would be required to participate because of the grants that we got
We already
over
did.
the years.
That's right.
Okay, my second question is, whether, you mentioned about reviewing other properties in Pleasantville. Assuming we have to do it, are there any vacant properties in Pleasantville that would fit the criteria for housing?
Well, I think.
I mean,
that-
was the
that-
list drawn up and specifically
I mean,
saying,
we didn't draw up a list with intent to say where
Okay.
could affordable housing go. We drew up a list and said, are there things that ought to be turned back to private ownership so they could become
Right.
productive pieces of the economy? My belief is that this is the biggest multifamily residential zoning property that we have. We own property down by DPW behind the football field that we have talked about whether we could rearrange the way our DPW operation goes and sell it as a commercial property. It's not at the moment really a residential zone. I think the reason that this attracted the attention of developers is that it's a property that the village owns that already has the zoning in place that makes this a compliant project.
I'd like to see something, though, where other parcels are defined as possibilities, so that we're not just focused on this piece of property if, in fact, we have to do it. I'd like to know,
Okay,
are there
right.
6 other pieces somewhere where we can also consider it, given that the county's requiring us to do it?
Well, they're not requiring anything.
Well,
at the
right
moment.
now, but let's say 6 months from now, a year
Yeah.
from now, we have
Right.
to do it, they can't reach it. I'd like to see other pieces of property defined that can come into the discussion, and not just because this is here now, we're talking only about this. If it's required, I'm not a lawyer, it's required. But this piece of property right there, you're talking about 32 feet. I can't see it at all. I see it as a very congested property. We spoke months ago on the phone
Yeah,
about
yeah.
the development.
Yes.
And I cannot see apartments there because Washington Avenue is small. It's a 2-lane, 30-mile-an-hour road. And I have complained to the police about speeders,
Right.
which the problem's never been resolved. But I can't envision an apartment there with people. Are we going to have a traffic light? It's just too congested. And if you're secondarily talking about another development possibility up the road, I think for us, that whole area, is that small area, it's just too much for us to absorb.
Understood. So that raises two questions that I don't know if you have thoughts, but certainly would be interested to hear from anybody. And that is, among the possibilities here is obviously the village could not sell this property and just keep it the way it is, in which case that would be a decision that we're going to... Sounds like a vote by acclamation. But just recognize what that means is that a piece of property that, to our knowledge, up until 1994, was always privately owned property, developable property, and property that generated taxes, low taxes, obviously because it wasn't developed, is now in village hands, and there are. You could easily get yourself to an argument in any given situation that there is a public reason to hold on to something, that the community at large should keep this and not generate the income and not generate the taxes because of X, too much density, whatever it might be.
Agreed.
But that also gets to the question of whether concern here is primarily about affordable housing or primarily about development at all. And, among the options out there would be that the village could sell this for some other purpose, a lower density, whatever. So,
I'm just not sure if it was,
Yeah.
I'm not in favor of the development. I
Okay.
don't see it as a viable place to do it. If you put 20, 30 families in there, first of all, we know there's no sidewalks.
no
If you're
sidewalks.
talking about affordable housing, where are people, how people walk to the village, honestly? I mean, my daughter drives a bike on Washington Avenue, and the policeman says to me, "Aren't you afraid to have your daughter drive you the bike on Washington?" And my response is, "Well, maybe if you'd stop the speeders, I wouldn't be." But it's honest, there's
No, I
no
understand.
sidewalks.
Right. No
So I don't know,
sidewalks,
the
right.
whole logistics of this having people in that area.
Well, no, I understand that, and that's, we're here to hear those
Right.
concerns. Let me just add to the question, just for all of you to think about, is the Baker Properties site has kind of devolved into a quieter and quieter and quieter site over the last some years since its heyday when it was actually fully occupied. And so, in the hypothetical that it came back to life as office property, it would generate several hundred potential employees there. That clearly isn't going to happen.
Right.
But there will be something going on there at some point. So,
All right, thank you.
okay, thank you.
I'm Tom Rooney. I live on Hillview Drive, which is parallels to Washington Avenue. And I have several questions of concern myself. First off, logically speaking, I am not against affordable housing as affordable housing. Now, one question I'd like to have answered, there's a big difference between affordable housing and low-income housing. So low-income housing to me starts with Section 8. Anybody could be moving in there, could be from problems to no problems. Where affordable housing to me means people like my children who can't afford to buy a house, or policemen, firemen, cops, teachers who need to affordable housing. If those are the people that will be able to move in, then I could never be against that in theory. In addition to that is, if this does go through anywhere in the village of Pleasantville, will the residents of Pleasantville have first dibs on moving into these units, or their children who are scattered throughout the county because they can't afford to live in Pleasantville? So those are a couple general questions.
You
So-
want to touch on those before
Sure,
you
yeah.
stay there and you ask.
Sure.
The county settlement, and as a result, the development interest is in affordable housing, not low income. Section 8 doesn't come into
vouchers.
play at all. These income levels are too high for that. So if I can go back to it, and you can also get it off the county website, what the income levels are. That chart.
No,
showed
I
earlier.
wrote them down.
Then, and my understanding is that there can't be preferences for projects built under this program for Pleasantville residents or anybody at all. There are no preferences. When we did the project for the senior center, that was seniors only, and those were lower income levels and some Section 8 income levels. But these projects can't be set aside for seniors either.
We have the responsibility to market it outside of the village of Pleasantville and outside the county. But it's done by a lottery. There's no choice given to anybody. It's done by, they go through an interview process,
And then if
am I right about that? Yeah.
And if a project is built as an ownership project, somebody goes through the credit checks and all of that and is able to get financing and buy a townhouse or whatever kind of unit it is, they then own it and live in it, and at the point at which they sell it, there's a formula that's established by the Housing and Urban Development people for what they can sell it for. They realize some appreciation, but not market appreciation, if in fact there is any. Hasn't been a lot in recent years.
Yeah.
But at any rate, the project then is sold to the next family who might buy it under the same terms.
Okay. On what Dennis pointed out, Washington Avenue is a racetrack. There's trucks, there's cars. In place of policemen, we have a radar sign. That's a joke. It's absolutely ridiculous. Dennis's kids and other kids, they come to Hillview to ride their bicycles so they don't get run over on Washington Avenue. If you live on Washington Avenue, where I have many friends, you can't back out into the street without getting killed now. And being fully aware that the Baker property something is going to happen with that. That's just going to further increase the traffic on Washington Avenue that cannot handle the traffic now. So all these things I hope are looked at. The property that Pleasantville has acquired that's in discussion here, $1 million is good for the village. Nobody can say that it isn't. The rents that would produce in taxes, or the taxes that would produce, would be great for the village. Our taxes are ridiculously high now. So anything that would reduce them would be great. However, in my personal opinion, having taken a lot of time looking at that property and having some building experiences of my own, that property is almost unbuildable. It falls down, so it's got to fall down 100 feet. You would have to put a structure up there at least 3 stories tall just to become to the level of the parking lot of the apartments that are there. And then you'd have to go higher than that just to get above street level. I mean, mechanically speaking, that's a horrible piece of property for anything to be built on, not to mention that if they're moving in there with kids, they're going to drown in the sawmill, get run over by a car in the parkway, or get run over by a train. I mean, that being said, if that's not enough, if anybody's noticed, it's been raining a lot lately. And that is nothing but a swamp. Thus, the Sawmill River should say something. It's wet there. It's great that the town acquired that property, but they also sold Manhattan for beads. So you gotta.
That deal worked out pretty well.
Yeah, that worked out
one?
fine. I don't know about this.
So let me just touch on that. And again, I mean, God, none of us are building engineers, and it's up to developers who are interested in this to believe that they have done their due diligence. But the report we have gotten is that these 3 different developers have all been out there with architects and engineers, and all 3 of them came back and said, this is buildable. It's a challenge, there's no question about that, and I'm guessing that's why the village got it originally.
Well, you can build anything anywhere if you have enough money to do it.
Right. So where I was getting on that is, again, if this goes further, you all will have an opportunity to see what developers want to present, but the impression we're left with is that because it is a steep site, that whatever would get built there, whatever it might be, whether it's under this project or if sold to somebody else, would be quite low relative to the existing garden apartment complex, and you'd probably be looking over the roof from the apartments that are above. So different developers, I'm sure, will have a different scheme of how to get down the hill.
Then my last point, because I could go on forever and I won't. Okay. Pleasantville, does the village have an architectural review board?
Yes.
I think it needs to be changed. Because if you look at what's been built recently in Pleasantville, in terms of Washington Avenue, across from the firehouse, the abandoned building there, I mean, other than being an absolute eyesore, even if it was occupied, anybody who's on the review board, maybe they missed a meeting, because that is the most ugly building put. I know it's residential there, but I don't know why it's abandoned. I don't know why it stopped being built. I mean, it wouldn't look so ugly if it was finished and people were actually living in it. But if that's the type of builders that the village or contractors or developers allow to come in and start doing things, then we have to find somebody who will actually finish a project.
All right, so
that it would be done.
Just for everybody's edification, I can report a little bit about
Sure.
that. The first thing to be said is we don't get to choose who buys a property, and we don't get to choose who they choose to build it. The village, that particular project on Washington Avenue, and I share your view that it's a grim thing, is a project that came to the Planning Commission with a developer that built that thing entirely without any zoning variances. There were no variances of any kind, and they jumped through a whole lot of hoops in order to provide the required on-site parking. That thing, as you may have noticed if you looked at it, has a driveway and a parking garage under it. If you look at it from the sawmill side, you see what they built into the side of the hillside. So, that obviously, in one respect, is a developer doing the job the zoning code asks him to do, which is to build on-site parking. In the end, I think it left some of us at the time they were going through the approvals shaking our head with the idea of whether the investment they were making to make all that happen could ever be realized. And in the end, it collided also with the economy, and that property was never finished. It doesn't have a certificate of occupancy, and I think the expectation at this point is that it'll get finished by somebody else who buys it in its distressed condition. So, but a number of people have said, obviously the Architectural Review Board question is a separate question about what control the village can exert over what it looks like, but we don't get to choose who buys the property.
No, of course.
So,
Okay. Well, just as a 60-year resident of Pleasantville, I feel like I can say all these things. But the village has changed so greatly, and it's gone from a little sleepy little town into what it is now. The Jacob Burns Theater, all the property that has taken off of the tax rolls and does not pay a penny of taxes, as I understand, to the village of Pleasantville. I just don't see it. So any project that we could have that will put some taxes back into Pleasantville will certainly be a worthwhile thing. But doing it at this site on Washington Avenue, it's ludicrous. I think, particularly, I think you got that property. We got that property in Pleasantville because nobody else wanted it, because it's not buildable. It just isn't. Now, of course, they can build something there, but logically speaking, that's not the property. It's down in the hole. All the sewerage would have to be up, with jet pumped up to Washington Avenue, because there's nothing
forget the
behind
details
it.
on that. I think there's a county sewer line goes down the
There's a
hill.
county line goes right through.
I mean, I get you,
Yeah.
and I dare say
Yeah,
that the
but it's
reason
just
whoever
bad
owned it
property.
abandoned it for taxes
Yeah.
was that it was a tough property to develop.
Yeah,
No question about it. So,
absolutely.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening, sir.
It's hard to follow him.
Yeah.
Steve Middlestat, Washington Avenue. I have a little bit of a different twist on this. I agree with everything that's been said so far. I'm a little confused about one thing. When I was on the Park and Rec Advisory Board, the Legacy Project was a thing in play, and the Rec Department was a thing in play. Now, the rules changed as we went along, but when it all started, a big thing was that we had enough affordable housing at the time to fit the requirements for the Legacy Project for the fields, which went through, which is fine. But the information that I was given at the time was all the criteria fit for us to get this county money. It fell through. That's all fine and dandy. We had also talked about trying to get the money for a recreation center, which we still don't have. Never once did anyone ever mention that the town already owned property that may be a viable area for a recreation center. And has that even been considered? I mean, we already own it. Why would we then have to start moving things around the county?
I think the first thing I would say is I can tell you, speaking for myself, I didn't know we owned this until we assembled this inventory about a year and a half ago to say, well, what are all the parcels the village owns?
Mm-hmm.
So, and the legacy money you referred to was that was essentially a funding mechanism for fields and recreation stuff.
Right, there was just...
I don't remember.
And they wanted roads.
Yeah.
They wanted, right,
they wanted the roads
but one of the
done.
stipulations was, and the
Still
big
do
thing
want
was,
the
we were
roads.
well in compliance with affordable housing. And for them to ask for more affordable housing in a town like this is just plain wrong.
Well, Norma may know the details on this, but I think at one point, even 7, 8, 9 years ago, the county had a target number of affordable units in every community, and ours was in the low hundreds, if I recall, 120, something like that.
The fair share
Fair share allocation.
yes.
That dates back long before this county settlement thing. So we were in the,
We were up there. I think
30
we were in
range.
the 200s. It was like
whatever.
unreasonable.
Bottom line is this.
Yeah.
Obviously, affordable housing as an idea, that is places that our kids could move into and stay in Pleasantville if they were so inclined, is an appealing thing. How it gets manifested is obviously more complicated. But as far as putting a rec center there, it's never come up, and I think it would be it's beyond our reach at the moment as a financial matter to think about building a new rec center anywhere. And I would be cautious, since we are not developers, about trying to do it in a challenging site like that. And I would assume that a lot of your neighbors would be unhappy for different reasons
Well,
about the notion of a rec center.
That's possible,
Yeah.
but it was never even proposed, and we're
Yeah.
still
We
trying to
didn't know
look
we
for
owned
land
it.
that we couldn't
Yeah.
find.
We
you
didn't know
know.
we owned it at the time.
You know, the Baker Building might be another spot for it, but it certainly
mean,
would
we
be,
did
it
talk
certainly
about
would
the
be
Baker.
affordable housing. I mean,
We don't own
the
Baker. We did
property.
talk about Baker as a possible site for lots of things. But, you know, just as is true of MLA, when that was talked about, should the village buy it, et cetera, when you take into account how much it costs to buy these properties, and then at the same time the act of buying it takes it off the tax rolls, you have the bond cost to come up with the money to buy it, and then the loss of income going forward, as well as the operating costs. It's a pretty tough calculus. So,
Just curious. That was it.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Margie Clark. I live on Romer Avenue. Just a couple of things. One thing I'd like to point out is I've lived here 26 years, and Pleasantville has always been very accommodating compared to other communities. When I moved here, there were 7 group homes between women's shelters and all of that. A lot of those have changed over time, but we were the only community within this area that had anything. No one else had pitched in for theirs. So I just want to point that out to begin with. So we've always been very accommodating. The one thing I'd like to clarify is that if we have people who work in Pleasantville, are they ineligible?
No.
They're eligible, but it's a
They're-
lottery.
So they could apply,
Yeah,
and
totally.
it's lottery. And then the other thing is, if they get interviewed, who is interviewing them? Is there a committee?
The,
or?
the management of that is the responsibility of the owner of the project.
So anyone who we sell this land to, we would have to rely on them as to who they choose to live there.
Am I correct, Norma?
Correct.
Right.
All right, that's a little scary.
Well, let me just say, for example, that one of the counties that expressed interest is Conifer, which is a major developer in the Northeast, and you can look them up. They're just one example. There isn't any question that the people who have come to talk to us about wanting to buy this property are real, solid people with a real solid track
But the
record.
thing is that
Right.
no officials from Pleasantville or from the county have any say into actually who moves in.
No, we wouldn't have any.
You want to touch on that, Norma?
Thank you.
The county, sorry, she's taller than I am. The county will certify after one of our HUD certified housing counseling agencies actually would qualify the families. They would do all the verification of their incomes, and they would look and see, make sure that they meet all of the qualifications required to either own or rent in one of the sites, and the county would only certify that. But beyond that, again, the selection is done completely by lottery. One of the reasons that the village of Pleasantville is eligible is really because of the demographics of the village. Based on the 2000 census, this village's African-American population was at or below 3%, and the Hispanic population was at or below 7%. So that's one of the reasons that this village is really in what we call the A category, or a community that really has an obligation to continue to look at affordable housing opportunities.
Although that's changed, right? I mean,
In the 2000.
All the communities have gotten more.
those levels.
Correct. Okay, all the communities have gotten a little bit more diverse, but the status and the eligibility of the village as a community for the settlement
that
still
was a question
qualifies.
somebody asked me in an email. The eligibility based on the settlement, the county settlement, is based on the 2000 census.
Correct,
And it doesn't matter what the 2010 census says.
correct. Okay?
Thank you,
Anybody-
Norma. Come on. Dave should give somebody.
So,
Yeah,
just to
you're next,
clarify,
Dave. Gotcha.
by you know, the last discussion that we just had, is race then going to be a criteria for, so really, realistically, there's no way to know whether this will address the county's diversity concerns or not. Because we're not using race as a criteria,
No.
you know?
Right.
Right? So there's no way to say that this is going to be the solution, that this is going to work.
No, it's just a matter of.
Which is
again,
where
is marketing it, that's the commitment, is that you're making it available to, and you're showing your commitment to promoting it and marketing it outside
Okay,
to other
so,
demographics.
I mean, really, and again, that the mechanisms of the settlement are useful background to understand what the rules of the road are for these projects, and they are obviously attracting the interest of developers because there is county support to make it happen. But, you know, from our standpoint, what is of interest is what would it mean to Pleasantville?
well, one more thing, then I'll shut up. If this was such a good thing for the communities, I don't think the county would be having to force them into 31 different localities.
Well, nobody's been
Nobody's
forced to do anything.
anything.
They're literally, I mean, it could get to that.
No, we're
point,
talking
but,
about,
you know,
yeah, well, we're talking about agreements that were signed and lawsuits that were filed. That sounds like forcing, if I get sued, that sounds like I'm being forced to
But
do
the
something.
county was sued. So, I mean, again,
Huh?
that's above our pay grade. But as of the moment, I mean, as I sit here,
Well,
my question for the village about the settlement is, the county clearly and right-mindedly is seeking to develop these units in ways and in places and with people who agree to do it without any trouble. At some point in time, if they don't achieve it, then there's the question of what might be required of us. As of the moment, nobody's forcing us to do anything.
But that issue is above our pay grade?
The issue of what the settlement
punting.
is already signed, sealed, and delivered. We didn't get a vote.
Okay.
So that's what I meant. Okay, you are waiting there.
How you doing? My name's Pete Donahue. I live in Washington, the village side. I have two questions, and I'd like to make some comments if I can.
Sure.
Is there a minimum income? I mean, I saw the $80,000 family of four figure. Is that max, or is there a minimum?
That I think is max.
Okay.
The minimum would be whatever, in the case of an ownership project, whatever you can get financing. You have to go through financing approvals. In the case of a rental, I assume the minimum would be whatever.
There's still going to be a standard rent that's set, so you still have to be able to afford that rent.
Right, right.
So, okay, as determined by the whatever the financing institution.
Well, if it's an ownership thing, you have to get financing to buy it.
Right.
If it's a rental, then the developer who
Right.
owns it is presumably wanting to rent people who pay the rent. So.
Okay. Secondly,
But actually, on that question, Norma, does it have to be 30% of your?
It's 30% of your income, and I did bring income limit sheets that explains
Okay.
both homeownership, how much a family at each of those income limits would have available to spend
Okay.
on their housing, plus, you know, so it works for both the rental
So under
and
this
the
program,
homeownership.
you can't spend more than 30% of your income on housing? And if you
The
do, you
units
would
are
not qualify?
priced
Yeah.
So that a family earning up to 80% or up to 50
Yeah.
and 60%.
I'm
I see.
sorry,
sorry,
Okay.
Mike.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Stay there, and then you can ask your follow-up
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Sorry. The units are going to be priced so that a family earning no more than 80% or 50 or 60% for the rental, because 20% of the rental units must be at 50% of median.
Uh-huh.
So they are priced so that those families can afford those units, paying no more than, for the rental units, no more than 30% of their income. But for the home ownership, we are actually allowed to go up to 33% of median, and their
Of
families
their
are,
income. Right.
sorry, of income. And the families are actually allowed a 40-year mortgage if they qualify for it.
Okay.
So it gives us a little bit more room for the principal and interest.
Uh-huh.
Let me just translate that family of four that you talked about earlier. The family of four with an income of the $83,800 actually has available to pay for their housing costs $2,095 a month. So that would cover their principal, interest, taxes,
Okay.
and insurance costs.
And does any individual project that a developer might build could be whatever they want it to be? It could be ownership at 80%.
Right.
It could be rental at 50, rental at 60, whatever. At
Right.
some point in time, the county has an obligation to have generated some of each type.
Correct. At least 50% of our units have to be rental.
Yes,
Up to 50% of the units can be home ownership.
I see.
But it is usually the developer that comes to us and says, this is the type of housing I'm proposing because these are the subsidies that
Okay.
I can get, or this is how I'm going to make it work.
Okay.
And how is it going so far? What do you?
Like I said, I reported a little earlier that we do have 154 units with financing in place.
Right, but I'm just wondering between sales and rental.
Probably about 50-50, actually.
Is that because of your kind of urging, or is that just how it comes down?
There's so many things in the pipeline right now that we're working on that it just really how it comes to be. Most of them this time around are being done by for-profit developers. And again, it's really the function of the economy right now. There's not a whole lot of regular market rate housing that they can build right now, just because the banks aren't financing it. But there are nonprofits that are proposing projects as well. So it's really a mix. There's no one size fits all. We have an individual unit, we have 2 family units, 3 family units, and we have one complex of 92 units. So it's 51 units. There's a mix of what we're working on.
At a certain point, senior housing can kick in. You can, and at what threshold was?
When the county has financing in place and building permits in place for 175 units in A communities, then we're allowed to do up to 25% of the units can be senior housing, but there's thresholds like up to 350 units, we're allowed only 1%, like half of the 25%. It can get really complicated.
And what
It is
age?
complicated.
What age counts as senior?
Usually 62.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Okay.
Didn't want to
Thank you,
usurp your
Norma.
moment there. You're back.
Yeah, or here or back there. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Is there any way that is there any federal funding involved? Is there any way of setting aside some units maybe for some of the returning veterans who are not going to be making a hell of a lot of money, who will be in need of affordable housing?
That's a very good question.
We are actually looking at this issue right now. One of the developments that we're doing is literally right outside the entrance of the Montrose V8. And it's going to be 92 rental apartments, 83 of which will qualify under our program. Part of the discussion that we need to have with the monitor to get this,
The monitor being just...
The federal monitor,
that
right.
There's a lawyer who was appointed as the federal monitor of this, following what the county does.
right, part of the discussion that we've had with him, not related to any specific sites or specific to veterans yet, is that he would consider preferences for certain groups if we can show that those groups are by their nature diverse. So if if we're proposing some kind of housing that we want to allocate a portion of units for staff housing, if we can demonstrate that the staff of a specific entity or a specific area of town is diverse, then they would consider it. So one of the things we're trying to track down right now is demographics on veterans. It's not as easy to find this stuff as you might think it would be. So we are right now evaluating really what is the demographic picture of the class of veterans.
So while it's not about race, it's all about race. No matter what you really say, it's all about race. It is, it's all about.
It's about creating opportunities.
Stop, you're spending our money against us.
That's exactly what... I'm going to get run out of here. It seems to me, you raised it, and Dave, you raised it too, it seems to me that there's an unspoken opposition here, and it's racial-based. I personally don't have a problem with increasing some economic diversity in this town, and if that means some ethnic diversity, I'm not afraid of that either. I don't see Pleasantville being rapidly turned into Compton or whatever neighborhood that was. I think we're a smart enough community that we could make something like this work, maybe set aside some units for some soldiers who are coming back, maybe set aside some units from people who actually work in this town, who serve us, provide services in this town, including, I don't know what the starting salary of a teacher or a cop is, but it took me a long time before I made $80,000. So I don't think we automatically should come out and say we have to fight until we get some more specific. I think I've got the podium, Dave.
Excuse me.
David.
You need to talk. You need... Stop, please.
I didn't call anyone a racist. I'm just saying I think we could do this in a calm way that benefits our town and society as whole, I've seen developments where maybe you have a 5 or 10% set aside for affordable housing, and the developer ponies up a ball field or ponies up a community center. I just don't think we should automatically be up in arms and setting up the barricades and saying no, no, no. I think we can have a calm, reasoned, intelligent discussion and not shut out affordable housing in small numbers. There are kids who went to Pleasantville schools who are home living with their parents and don't have a shot at living in this town. And that's all.
Thank you.
There was an easier way.
Yes. But that would have been part of the image.
It's nice to see you.
Anybody else? You want to push that computer back up before
Before it falls down.
Hi, I'm Fran Bondich, and I live on Washington Avenue. I have a question. Is that considered a flag lot?
My understanding at the moment, and again, in the end, Mike Testa has to look at this when somebody actually proposes something.
Because I understood that you couldn't build on flag lots.
I think a flag lot is defined as a lot that has insufficient road frontage, like, you know, the notion is a lot with a little tiny road.
Right, like that.
So that I believe, and again, this is at the moment speculative, is that the piece that sticks out to Washington Avenue is not wide enough, even at 34 feet, to be buildable without a variance. Whether the variance is significant, I don't know, but that certainly is an issue, no
It's
question.
an issue, because if someone else had a flag lot, they wouldn't be able to build.
Well, again, the zoning code says.
I thought it was a no.
I mean, the question is, when is it a flag lot? It's clearly a flag lot when there's, you know, one car width out to
Right.
the road. When you have 34 feet, is it still a flag lot, you know, et cetera? So that's a zoning code issue.
Okay. Also, if
Yeah.
these were built, would the government subsidize the taxes, or would they have a lower tax base?
They'd have a
or-
lower tax base. In the case of a rental property, the assessment would be based on the rent roll, which is the way all rental properties, and in fact also co-ops and condos get assessed. If it were a home ownership project, the taxes would be based on what the apartments sold for, which is a lower than market rate, but they would be taxed on their value.
If a builder buys a piece of property for $1 million, is that 1/3 of the cost of the entire project?
I don't know.
Because my math would be that each unit would, if you're saying 32, would be $93,000 for each unit.
Well, I don't know the answer to
Is
that.
what I'm trying to get to? Would a builder come and try to double that number and get as many units in as he could?
I think the zoning code, and as I say, the zoning on that parcel has existed for a long time. I think, separate from this issue of how wide the access road is, I think a quick review, and again, this is all subject to confirmation, suggested that the as-of-right build-out was something in the high 20s. Does that sound right, Patty?
That does sound right.
Yeah, something like that.
So it wouldn't be
somebody,
like
if somebody
60,
came in
it
and
wouldn't be-
asked for 60, they'd be asking for a dramatic zoning variance, and they would, you know, have to go to the zoning board about that. And obviously, zoning variances are in the hands of the zoning board, but I think there's no precedent for that kind of thing in this community.
Okay. As far as the project that was on Washington Avenue, is there such a thing as a performance bond, that someone who comes in and builds has some kind of bond, that you don't end up with a vacant project that's not completed?
I don't know that we would have the right to hold a performance bond, just like we don't have the right to hold a
No.
performance bond on, you know, a private owner doing something, you know, on their own home. Whether there are performance bonds attached to the financing, which obviously isn't ours, are there?
Generally, there would be, but.
Right. So just for those who may be listening later on the tape, Norman Drummond indicated that generally there would be a performance bond attached to the financing.
Okay.
So,
All
I mean, it's funny, the issue of the building on Washington Avenue has brought that up. You know, why doesn't the village have a performance bond that says, all right, you got approval to do this and you didn't make good on it? Is this not a mechanism that we have? And that same mechanism wouldn't feel good to a private homeowner who's going to put an addition on their house, and we say, well, you got to give us a performance bond in case you don't finish it. So, and historically, obviously, and you know this better than we do,
But if a
we've not had a lot
homeowner
of
is
trouble.
adding onto their house, they're paying taxes. Is that building on Washington Avenue, are they paying taxes on that
Yes.
building? It's been
Well,
assessed?
Paying is a different question than
Paying.
levying.
Okay.
We'll get the taxes eventually.
Well, maybe you will own that property, and that could be,
Oh, dear God.
I hate these things, so I'm not talking into that.
You can tuck, okay.
You have to.
You can
though.
pull it down
That's
if
the
you
only way
want.
they
There.
can hear you, yeah.
These things.
Sorry.
All right, I'm Penelope Thomas. I guess I'm representing the buildings, the garden apartments on Washington Avenue. I clearly, I'm sure you understand, am totally opposed to any kind of building back there. I think that's going to be a disaster in the making for anything. I'd like to understand first, what do you mean by variance on the, I guess, to get down there?
The issue, and again, it's not our call. If a proposal is made, Mike Testa, the building inspector, would compare it to the zoning code, which again, you can see online if you want to. This is an R4 zone. And the zoning code has various definitions about the nature of the lot, how much can be built on it, setbacks, side yards, all that sort of stuff. So the question is, if in fact it doesn't have a wide enough frontage on Washington Avenue to meet the zoning code, then an applicant would go to the Zoning Board of Appeals, which is made up of 5 residents, and make a petition to get a variance from it. So,
Getting the property from where?
no, it wouldn't be getting new property. It would be to
Just
a
allowing
variance
that
to say,
it be 34 feet across and that's
to
it?
allow a property with a 34-foot access to the road to be built.
And that is the only entrance and exit for that property there?
That's
showing down
the
side?
only property that is that we own as part of this.
No, what I'm
Obviously,
saying is that little entrance down to the side of the,
This thing
yes,
here.
that little yellow line
Right.
down there is the only entrance and exit that would be for that property. Is that correct?
That is correct, unless a developer were to work out something different, like an easement across your property. So
Yeah, not a possibility. Not a possibility.
I had that idea.
Yeah, no.
So,
So,
I mean, clearly,
I mean, there's
34 feet.
clearly
Right.
a huge amount of issues with that. I mean, we're talking parking. Already there's parking issues on Washington Avenue in that area. People are parking in the streets. We have issues with some of the people in the neighborhood parking in the parking lot there. We're looking into the situation now as far as what can we do, maybe getting a tow truck to come in and start towing cars that don't belong there.
Well, there's a parking requirement in the zoning code as well.
Well, my concern is that with that kind of a hill and the winter, I don't see how people who are going to live in any kind of housing down there are going to get up and down that hill without any kind of massive issues. And they're going to start looking at what's the easiest way for them to get back and forth, up and, down Washington Avenue. And going up and down that hill is not going to be the solution.
And that's a useful point, and we'll make note of that as this proceeds. If it does proceed, I mean, those are site plan issues that would be addressed by the Planning Commission. But certainly, it's a legitimate point. There's no question it's a tough site, not your average site.
I mean, like somebody else had mentioned, I mean, that's a steep hill going down. I don't see too much flat land there. And I
No, it's a
can't
hill,
imagine
no.
too many people wanting to live right up against the train tracks. I mean,
I
our
think-
tenants complain about the fact that the sound of the train tracks, the train going
Yeah.
past is horrendous, and they don't particularly care for it. I can't imagine somebody living practically on top of it is going to
Again,
be happy.
the property, the back of the property lines up to the back of everybody's backyard. So I think a developer would propose whatever they propose, whether the parking is below or above. Clearly, there's some tiering that would be created in some sort of retaining wall, I assume.
I mean, that I'm concerned about the garbage. The bulk garbage outside. We already have situations where people are dumping their garbage in front of the building. How am we are supposed to be able to control their bulk stuff, and where is that going to go? Because that's not going to be curbside. They don't have curbside at that point. They'll just have their little driveway that goes down, which is going to actually cause an issue as far as our exit, because our exit will be right up against their entrance and exit. And now, where's the confusion? People aren't going to know. I'm going to have people going down the exit instead of coming, it's going to be a disaster. It really is going to be a
Those are
disaster.
site plan issues, no doubt.
As far as impact, I mean, you're talking about, what was it, the Baker is it the Baker
Baker
property?
across the street.
Okay, I'm still trying to figure out if they're going to turn around and sell it and start doing development on that, and this per se goes through, you're going to have two massive development plans in a small area happening at the same time. I'm still trying to figure out how, with that driveway going down to that property, if that's done, how huge trucks are going to be coming in delivering all kinds of different building materials. I mean, as I said, Washington Avenue isn't a big road to begin with. Now you're going to turn around and talk about huge trucks coming in to drop off lumber, rock, whatever else is used in building something. I just see the whole thing is really a disaster. And I really think that at this point it should be just something that's left as is. Aesthetically for the area. I mean, it's got the wooded area, it looks nice, you've got your green space. You're to turn around and say that we've got to use all green space in order to build housing. Is that the right answer too?
Again, I mean, I think that's a completely worthy point and one that is on our minds too. And the question comes down to, and different people will come to different conclusions about it, is this something that the public ended up owning it accidentally, so to speak, because the previous owner stopped paying taxes? So is that an opportunity to say this is now green space and the community will continue to own this and thus not receive tax revenue from it? Or on the other end of the equation, whenever we get a property like that, normally when you get a property like that, the goal is to sell it back to a private owner and make it productive again. But because it's such an unusual property, that's a pretty complicated question.
And I also have a question. I mean, okay, so the yellow block is there. To the right and to the left of it, does that property belong to the homeowners who own the houses on the
Actually,
Washington Avenue side?
property.
Or
You own this.
no. Up against where the yellow is, near the train tracks, that whole back area. Yes.
This is owned by...
No. Go where the yellow is.
Yeah.
Where your finger go to the left. Go all down that bottom area right there.
This? Well, these...
Is that all part of the houses back there?
These homeowners own, I mean, I can't, this is the tax lot.
That's what I'm trying, see, I can't really
this,
see.
I believe, and you guys could tell me, is that this is the back of your properties, right?
That's
I mean,
so it is the back of their properties going all
most
the way
of you
down.
own that very deep back lot
And
down
that's
the
what I
hill,
was-
right? Yes.
Okay, and that's what I was just curious because can't really tell too well from the map there. It's very small.
Right, and again, obviously, this isn't a survey, it's the tax map.
Mayor,
No, I realize that.
Going north, the village owns that other piece, heading north of that.
Which, we own this piece too. Is that what you're saying?
Goes up further, all the way
This?
to the power lines,
Oh, really? So we own this
all the way up to the power, all the way up to the,
up to the aqueduct?
a little further.
Huh? All the way up to here? So the village owns all this? Okay, there you have it.
So that truly affects a lot more people in the back of their properties.
We're going to put a
and
Walmart here?
What they're going to do. I mean, like I said,
You just got some more affordable houses.
it doesn't look like it's a very good property for development. I don't think it would be a very well-received property for somebody to
do you
try to...
know, and this is a question I've asked and nobody has yet answered it, maybe you guys know, whether the property that we now own was it at one point in common ownership with the property you own?
I don't believe so. We had always assumed it was part of the railroad,
Yeah.
owned that.
I mean, it's
That's what
interesting
we had
because
always
we have a
been
title
told.
search and it changed hands a couple of times in the 60s. I mean, clearly somebody had in mind developing it and several different people had in mind developing it at various points.
Well, they
But
might
never
have,
did.
depending upon
Yeah,
the housing around it, but,
Right.
I mean, with everything there is now, to get in and out of there is going to be a tough turn of events to begin with, let alone the fact that, like everyone said, it's a very steep property to get down to. So, like I said, I just, so far, I haven't seen anything positive in this whole situation for the apartment buildings, for the residents in that area. I just don't see how that's going to make a positive impact for anybody. Especially, like I said, how long is a project like this going to take to develop? I mean, it's not going to be weeks, months. You're talking probably a couple of years that everybody in
project, no
that
question.
whole area is going to be
Right.
totally inconvenienced. And again, looking at the fact that not only would it be there, but you're talking about the Baker property up top. And again, a lot of construction in a very small area. So
Thank you.
that's my point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Christopher Marengo. I live at 370 Washington, which is right next to where this proposed building is going to be.
Above it or below? Here?
Right there. That
Okay.
first house,
Right
that's
here?
my backyard.
Yes.
I've been living there since 1994. My backyard has been sinking since then. It's a 90-degree drop from my backyard to where the proposed building is going to be. If you had 3 builders tell you that they can build there, they're lying to you because they haven't seen the property. It is not buildable. Unless they build it on stilts or they build it on the side of a mountain like the Pueblo Indians, I don't know what they're building there. They ain't building any affordable housing there, so.
Hi, I'm Dan Townsend, live on Bedford Road. Had 2 questions. One question was just to reconfirm or maybe get educated on how the calculus of supply and demand of what's the supply of affordable housing stock versus what the need is. And then the second question is, in our catchment area in the towns that abut Pleasantville, is the percentage of affordable housing greater in our town than other towns? Because I guess I have a concern, there might be a concern in the room as well, that Pleasantville might become a bedroom community for the adjacent towns.
So, Norma, maybe you're the best to comment on the supply and demand issue about affordable housing.
There's not one size fits all, as I mentioned before. There's going to be families of all different sizes of working in all different places. So I can't say that everybody who's on a list is always going to be interested in development in Pleasantville or in Peekskill or in any other community. It's just not going to happen. But the county right now, since September 30th, we opened up what we call a central intake system where anybody who is interested in homeownership opportunities, one of our homeownership opportunities under the settlement agreement, can sign up. And in the first 6 months of our having the list available online, we did have 576 families sign up. Of those, almost 400 of them were Westchester residents. The others came from outside. They came from as far away as Connecticut, New Jersey, California, Kentucky, Virginia. So clearly the list reached across the country. And they're continuing to sign on as our HUD certified housing agencies do housing expos at pretty soon they're going to be starting to do them at the heritage fairs at the Kensico Dam. They are collecting additional names of people who are interested in these housing opportunities. So we've been doing affordable housing for many, many years now. When we create units, there's usually marketing that's done months in advance of the certificates of occupancy being issued and the units being available. There's usually waiting lists for people who are interested in these. But again, how many people really are specifically looking for a development in a specific community? We don't necessarily collect that information. We do get a sense of, are they interested in the northern part of the county versus the southern part of the county versus the water, the Hudson River communities or something of that nature. But it's, the opportunity again is to create the knowledge and the awareness of these units being out there.
So the need is there, but as far as the relative need in space, Pleasantville versus Hawthorne versus Chappaqua. Correct. What are the towns around us doing, or what have they done to date outside of this program or inclusive of this program?
Right next door, you have, I'm trying to think who is right next door. You have Chappaqua. You have Newcastle has actually done a significant number of units. They actually built a number of years ago, about 13 years ago. They did the Stone Creek development, which is right along the Taconic Parkway and 100. You can actually see it along the parkway there. Those were 26 two-family units. That again, you can go and see what they look like 15 years later or 13 years later, and they really, they're in good shape.
Or Briarcliff?
Briarcliff actually just did a zoning amendment to allow an office park the developer's going to actually demolish his office building and rebuild his office building, but they're actually allowing 14 townhouses to also get developed on the site. That's included in our 281 that are in the works. Briarcliff is also considering right now a special permit for a former parish house on a site that would then allow for probably 9 families to live there. Trying to think who else is.
Newcastle is in the midst of talking about.
Yeah,
a
actually,
project,
Newcastle, right? Newcastle has a couple different projects in the work. One being the Reader's Digest site, where it's potentially 20% or I think 20 of the 110 units I think were proposed to be affordable. But in addition, there's another site along the Sawmill Parkway and along the train tracks. Again, we do developments along train tracks. You can soundproof them so that people don't necessarily get the sound coming in and disturbing them. But they have another site there where the Conifer Development is proposing 32 to 36 units there as well. So there have been another number of communities in this area who have actually been.
Newcastle as well.
Yes, that's right. Thank you. Last Monday we were at North Castle. North Castle has approved 10 townhouses on Old Route 22. So we do it for home ownership. So we do have 10 units in the where. How about where? Bronxville. We don't have anything really in the works right now in Bronxville.
Right.
We have met with Bronxville, but like I said, there's nothing really in the works right now. Rice City actually had approved a private development for a developer of 22 units. The developer, they actually approved it as senior housing, and the developer came back and said, I'd like to work with the county on this one, and they actually took off the requirement that it be senior housing, and 18 of those units are now moving forward as county affordable units. So that's Rice City. Pleasantville, we do have one condo that was actually built probably 14, 15 years
we
ago.
have 2 condos.
Well, there's one now. There were actually 3 originally,
Yes,
but one of them
one is now going to be included.
one is
in the
going to
list
be
of
included.
750,
Yes.
right.
So actually, Pleasantville is already going to get credit shortly for one condo already.
And
That
then
it's
the
an
Pleasant
existing
Avenue
unit
project.
that we're going to step in and buy down the purchase price, and then we're just going to sell it in the middle of a development. We'll just resell it with a restricted resale value. So like I said, there are developments all sizes really going on all over the place. Okay.
I have one last comment too, and I believe Pete Donahue mentioned this before, but if this project does go through, I mean, it's one thing that, the county did what it did and it happened before our time and all of that. If this project does go through, or any project like it, I would like to at least earmark some of those properties, or as much as we could, to the local community, and to keep it at home. Or the veteran idea is also a nice idea, but would like to, instead of inviting people from, I love Virginians, I'm from the South myself, but I think it's more important that our tax dollars stay close by.
And I think, that's a discussion we have had in the context of the senior center, and I think that the law does not permit those preferences. Am I right, Norm?
The settlement agreement does not.
Right. Okay. So you could conceivably have a project that not all the units qualified for the settlement.
Correct.
Okay.
Mark Markarian, Hillside Avenue. Gentleman up here before, he's now left, but he insinuated that it's about time we had a place where people who work in Pleasantville could live in Pleasantville. And I go to ShopRite a lot, and I've gotten to meet some of the people there. I know Rosa, a short Mexican or Guatemalan woman, she lives on Manville Road. I know that because she lost her phone, and I found it, and we waited for her at MacArthur's to come over, and now we've got a regular conversation going. There's another one. Peter, you live by the staircase?
Yes.
Okay. At the bottom of the staircase, another woman who works in ShopRite.
Right.
She lives
And that's
right there.
Key Foods, yeah.
Oh, is it Key Food?
Right.
I'm saying it wrong again.
Yeah.
And then there's, I think her name is Fran. She lives over in Sorrels. So there are a lot of people who work in town and live in town. One quick example there. Another thing is, no matter how you cut it, there will be poor people living here somehow. I don't know how, but they'll end up living here. And I measured before coming here on Google Maps the distance from the southernmost point to Key Food, because that's the only place you're going to buy food. And it's a mile walk. It's 9/10 of a mile. So that means someone has to walk from there to Key Food and back. And one other comment I'd like to make is, as typical with government, it's a concentration. Now, I know this is affordable and it's not Section 8 housing or something like that, but it's a concentration all in one spot. And since this is really going to be based somehow on race, okay, anybody who's of color will always now be assumed to live there, even though they don't, wherever they live. And I just find it to me, it's like benevolent racism. It's trying to do something and then put everyone in one box. And I find it untasteful. That's all.
Anybody else? If we're winding down, we'll talk about what to do next, but we have a regular meeting starting at 8:30, which you are welcome to stay for. We have scintillating resolutions.
There's just, one other aspect of this that I don't think we touched on much, and I'm hoping Norma can explain to everybody. In my experience, developers are developers because they make money being developers. They build buildings and they sell them or they rent them or whatever it is. And there's a profit motive behind them. When you're doing affordable units, you're selling them below market value. There's no profit in it. You can't build a $200,000 unit and sell it for $90,000. You just can't do it.
Well,
So-
I think there is profit in it.
There is profit.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why they want to do it.
Right.
Yes,
But
right.
I'm wondering if Norma could explain more how, for example, county money or federal money that's funneled through the county works, state money. I know although you work for the county, I know you're familiar with it, and how that money gets inserted into these types of projects, where the money goes, who makes the money, whether or not the county recoups the money, and also if you could touch on the resale limitations that the owners or the renters, have.
Okay, thank you. Shane, are we live?
Yes.
Okay, so for anyone who's watching for our regular meeting, we're finishing off a neighborhood meeting regarding a proposal about affordable housing on Washington Avenue. And so our regular meeting was supposed to start at 8:30, but we're a little late on that, so hang tough, we'll get there.
All right, Joe had a couple questions, so I'll start with first speaking to the cost. First and foremost, the important thing is to understand that the site plan approval all gets done locally. The county does not dictate how many units or what it's going to look like or anything like that. It all is driven by the local boards. So your architectural review board, your planning board, your zoning board, your village board, whoever has a normal say in any normal development would have the say on this development as well, what it looks like. Maybe not even all of the units are affordable. Again, we'll take 2, we'll take 4, we'll take whatever it is. So the developments gets approved. The local building department will issue the building permits. It doesn't take fewer 2x4s to build these affordable developments. They will still cost the same. The difference only becomes how much the county subsidy is going to be required, because getting the affordability level from here, this is what it costs to build it, down to here, this is what we're going to be able to sell it for if it's home ownership, or this is what the debt service that the rents will be able to support on the development going forward. So the subsidy, this is all the county's looking to participate in, or sometimes the state grants will step in. What's the gap to get it there? There is a profit in it for developers, certainly. The developers will get anywhere between 10 and 15%, depending upon the development. Are they going to earn $100,000 on a development these days? Not at all. Not if they're doing affordable housing. Will they earn maybe $20,000 per unit? That's a much more reasonable development fee. It does not cost less to build these units than it would cost to build a market rate unit. Again, except that maybe some of the finishes might be of a lower grade. You don't necessarily need granite countertops. You don't necessarily need crown molding or things of that sort. So the finishes will be of a slightly different grade than what you would normally see in some of what you might see today as market rate housing. There will be deed restrictions filed on any property that the county brings into its affordable housing portfolio. If the properties are operated as rental housing, the deed restrictions will govern what the rents will be allowed to be by bedroom size, so that we translate that household income size into a bedroom size. We do have a minimum occupancy so that we make sure that families are not overhoused. We don't put a one-person household into a 3-bedroom unit. But then if it is a home ownership opportunity, the deed restriction will set forth the formula for how much that property can be resold for. Generally speaking, the resale formula is based on the sale price that the family paid in the first place, the depreciated value of any major capital improvements that they did during the course of the time that they owned the property. So that family that replaced the roof in year 20 and sells the property 2 years later gets the depreciated value of having replaced that roof. So it's the sale price that they purchased at, added to it the depreciated value of any major capital improvements, and then we calculate that against the sale price, the consumer price index, the CPI, at the time that they look to sell the unit, so that there is usually a gain available for the property owner. Again, there's an incentive in there for them. If it's home ownership, there's an incentive there for them to maintain the property and to keep it up so that they can make a reasonable turn at the end there. All right? I think that should answer that.
You can be next there. We've got you. I see it, right.
Hi, Elizabeth Brody, Robbins Road. This has nothing to do, sorry, to Washington Avenue. I just have a quick question about the rec department. The Pleasantville Ambulance Corps, there's nobody occupies it, right? Do we own it?
Yes.
Okay, so can the rec department go in there?
They are going to. It's in the works.
Oh, they are?
So, yeah.
Where have you been, Liz? Hi, out of the loop. Okay,
All
thank you.
right. You, sir. Yes.
Can I just comment on that? That project's out to bid right now. If anybody knows anybody interested in working on that project for us, there's a public bid opening. When is it, June 3rd. June 3rd for reconstruction of that ambulance corps building into a rec center. So spread the word.
Good evening, Brian McGrinder. I live on Washington Avenue as well. I'm actually from the Bronx. I'm 1 of 12, so I know what affordable housing is. And three of myself and two of my siblings actually live in town, and I think it's a great place to live. I agree with most of what's been said here with Washington Avenue, and I mean, it's to think of that as having all those units in that space. I've been down there. Is, I think, ridiculous. And then you take into consideration the Baker property. So if you had those two developments happening, you could have those sold to that developer, that section, then the Baker property rezoned for condos or whatever have you, and you still might not meet the requirements for the county, right? As far as diversity. So if those two things were done,
the Baker thing at the moment.
Right. No, I understand that.
I mean, that would be presumably a market rate project,
right,
unless there was a negotiation of a set aside of some kind for affordable units.
Right, but what could potentially happen, those both could be developed as affordable housing, and then we may not.
I think it's highly unlikely.
But I mean, it could happen. Yeah. We may not meet the minimum requirement for the diversity requirement for the county, and then we would be required to build. No, at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that if those units didn't get built, those 750 units, and then they parceled out. Every town, depending on your population, whatever it might be, had to build this X amount of units. Of those, you had to have this many units sold to this ethnic group. You couldn't.
You can't violate fair housing law.
But I thought you said that a minimum.
It's not. Okay. People apply. They have to qualify based on income. It has to be affirmatively marketed to areas outside Pleasantville or whatever the community it's in.
Right.
And then there's a lottery.
Okay, so it wouldn't be in no way, shape, or form could it be based.
There's no threshold for racial diversity in the population that ends up living there, but there is a requirement to market to racially diverse areas.
All right. But my final point is, I mean, I think the town owns that parcel there. We're in control of it. So I don't think it should be sold for affordable housing when we could potentially have more affordable housing, which would bring down the value of the property. And as everybody knows, the tax base, everybody had to pay more taxes now because our property is worth less now, right? So we have to produce the same amount of taxes.
I don't know that's been the experience elsewhere, but I hear you.
Right. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I just want to bring up that there is a Fair Housing Act of 1964 that, is it 1964? Do I have 1968? That every municipality has to follow. And this settlement kind of goes along with is
along the same lines of this Fair Housing Act.
Yeah, and I understand that.
By law, you have to.
My point is if both those properties were developed for affordable housing, then we might have to, because we're under those certain, what is it, 5% and 7%? 3 and 7. Then we may have to, on top of those units, those projects, have to build another project.
I don't think
I'm not
that's the
seeing
case.
that
Well, no,
as-
I'm just
as
I'm
likely.
just asking.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case, and also, what has been the experience of property values going down when, have you experienced that in the places that have already put in units?
I mean, we can't say, we've done videos on this, we put them, actually the videos were on our website called Housing Alive, to be able to show people how, when you drive down the street, you can't pick out which is the affordable housing development. In some cases, our affordable housing developments have actually encouraged investment in other properties on the street because they go in looking beautiful, Excuse me? What town? We've done affordable housing developments in lots of towns all over, in all 5 of the county subregions. So there are videos online, our Housing Alive videos. There's one for each of the regions in the county, so you can actually see, based on your region, what it actually looks like. So included, I believe, in the Pleasantville region is also Rye Brook Properties, Rice City, Mount Pleasant, because we did a site in Mount Pleasant. So there are other developments that are on there within your region.
Thank you.
All right?
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything they wanted to add? Okay, so let me just remind everybody, if you have friends or neighbors who are interested in this subject and couldn't come tonight, PCTV will have this up on their website in a few days, Shane, at pctv76.org, and you can call that up as an on-demand webcast. So if there's somebody who wasn't able to come and you'd like to refer them to it, that would be a great way to do it. If you wanted to dig in a little more to the zoning, it's the R4 zoning district, and you can see the complete text of our zoning code at pleasantville-ny.gov. I think our next steps is we've obviously gathered your comments tonight, and any further comment you have, you're welcome to get it on over here to Village Hall. If you want to add something in writing, we'll go back and talk to the people who have come to us and describe the discussions that have been had so far, and then we'll see what the next step is. If in fact we end up with one or more developers who are serious about wanting to do this, they would be the ones who ought to be able to show you what it is they propose and how it might work on the site, and then we'll all have benefit of looking at a specific proposal, obviously still schematic, but a specific proposal. So we would welcome any further comment. I thank you all for coming. I thank Norma for coming, and also Mary Mahan, who's from the County Executive's Office, who's involved in the housing settlement. So much appreciated that you all came, and Rose Noonan from the Housing Action Council, who has been a great ally of ours in many ways, especially with the senior housing project. So thank you for coming, and I thank you all for coming. And again, the takeaway is we're here to talk about it, and that's what tonight kicked off. Thanks a lot.